Mike, get in here.
Hi, Paul.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Have a seat. Okay, Mike, so you're one of South Africa's most colourful and visible economists. And
Only because of my weight.
Well, you look as though you've had a few lunches since I saw you last.
Absolutely.
As far as it goes with these economic discussions in South Africa, we know that we've got like the craziest country in the world. We've got all of these historic tensions. The people who pay the money with taxes, the people who get the services, who used to, who should, or blah, blah, blah. In your mind frame, are we making progress as a nation? I mean, what are we going to do to get growth back up to that 7% target or whatever it is?
Don't you think we're doing quite well? Because, I mean, if we take the school standard, we only have to reach 30% to pass. So in South Africa's term, a 4.4% economic growth out of 7%, that's over halfway mark. That's a pass. Come on.
So in other words, if we want 7 but we only get 3, then it's like the matric pass rates.
Yeah, that's exactly that. And then, you know, maybe 62% of the country does get something out of it. The other 38 we don't really care about, do we?
But seriously, I mean, do you think we have the worst economic management in the world? Or is it just more a case of like we have these contradictions which are insurmountable?
No, I don't think we have contradictions that are insurmountable, and I don't think we have necessarily economic management that is the worst in the world, because we don't have economic management as such in this country. But the fact of the matter is, in South Africa, we have a huge problem with unemployment, and we need to get rid of that. And those are the type of things that we need to look at in a very serious light, and that's not something to laugh about. But at the moment, the laughability of everything is the ways that we want to get rid of unemployment.
Okay, but I mean, economic policy gets crafted in the sort of ANC caucus, and we know that the views there range from, you know, Stalinist on the one side all the way through to kind of pro-market capitalism. What comes out the other end in terms of what the National Treasury does seems to sometimes be quite effective, sometimes not. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is, are we, you know, doing all right considering our weaknesses? What would you be doing different if you were the Minister of Finance?
Well, that's an open-ended question in the worst case scenario. But first of all, the one thing that we need to look at is what are we actually getting out of our economy. If we take it just a simple way of putting it, you know, we used to pay about an ounce of gold for an iPad. Today we pay only about half an ounce of gold for an iPad. So this is an ideal opportunity for us to upgrade our infrastructure, ideal opportunity to get businesses to invest more, yet that's not happening at the moment. And that's one of the things that we would like to, as a country, see happening. And that's one area which I would like to see a lot more emphasis on. And although the Minister of Finance is now putting more money into infrastructure, we also know that South Africans are very good at talking, drinking beer, sitting around the pot, and we don't really use underpants because we don't import them. It's the only clothing item we apparently don't import. We may import a lot of other things, but not that. And what we get to then at the end of the day is we just don't get down to the actual work, the hard work. So in that sense,
but is that fair? Because we know that there are large parts of the economy that nobody ever talks about because they're held privately or in small businesses like tourism, for example, and it quietly gets on with the job. It has very little regulation. It's growing quite nicely. We've got a booming finance sector of the economy. Everybody's always obsessing about, you know, the mining industry and whether or not it's been regulated properly in the whole nationalization debate. But aren't we sometimes too hard on ourselves? I mean, quietly, there's quite a lot of dynamism in our economy.
Well, I think, you know, if you go and compare us to some other emerging market growth rates and even African growth rates, we're not doing that well. Africa's going to grow at about 5.5%, 6% this year. We're going to grow at around 3.5% to 4%. So we are a few steps behind Africa. Yeah. We're even further behind emerging market growth rates. And those are the things. So how do I judge this? Do I use the matric standard and say, yes, we have reached a pass mark?
So we get a B for talking and a D minus for execution.
Well, I think even maybe an F for execution.
What about the infrastructure program? We see the construction companies moaning like drains. They don't see the money coming out. Do you think we will ever get these power stations and roads actually built? Is it merely a matter of delays, or do you think there's going to be a total failure?
No, I think what we're doing, in some cases, we are building power stations, we are building roads. It's costing us a heck of a lot. If we look at our power station, it's one of the most expensive coal power stations ever built in the history of the world. If we look at our toll roads, it's about 3 times the cost that other emerging market pay for toll roads.
That's
and
the work you're just doing now.
That's the work we're just doing now, and we're looking at twice the cost of American highways. So, somewhere something doesn't gel. So when we do build something, it also ends up costing us a heck of a lot. And if we carry on this way, where we see the pipeline increases that we're seeing right now coming through, that then passes on to the fuel price and so forth, eventually the economy can't carry those prices. We could make it even better in terms of mad markets. If a ton of maize costs you the JSE, is the JSE worth a ton of maize, or is a ton of maize worth less than the JSE? And that's a good question, isn't it?
What about this housing thing? You were laughing earlier. What's your joke about housing?
Well, I think, in the South African sense, I think if we want to create enough jobs, there's a few things that we could do. In the typical South African fashion and worldwide fashion, we could change the definition of unemployment yet again. We could then say to people, right, if you breathe, you're employed. Because at the moment, you need to do a lot of things. You need to actually be more active to be unemployed. You can't just be inactive and not unemployed. Then the second thing that I would do is just give everybody a teaspoon. And they can build a teaspoon. And they can build their way to work and give their significant others a piece of a needle. And they can make their clothes very slowly. And that way we'd have everybody employed, don't you think?
So you're saying if you want spade-ready projects, but you want to break it down further, then just give everybody a teaspoon.
Exactly.
Very novel. Now, Mike, I want to remind you of an incident. We worked together nearly a decade ago, and we were looking for a venue for an economic presentation about South Africa's future. And instead of the usual boring conference halls, we went and had it at the Nando's in Savoy on Louis Botha Avenue. And it was great fun because everybody stopped and thought, well, look, we don't have such a bad economy. We're thriving. We've got this international brand going forward. Is that not also something to take as a positive? Wind forward a decade?
I've thought about this for 10 long years, and I love that Nando's, and I think Nando's is still great. I think we should have a very close look at South Africa. We're doing well in certain areas. We're doing a little bit of film production, but our advertising industry is brilliant. We are the financial capital of Africa. We've got to market it more. This type of TV station is excellent for South Africa, and we've got to have more inputs into this type of thing going out there, because we are, in that sense, doing a lot promoting Africa. We've got a very good transport infrastructure, and we can gel to the rest of Africa. Yes, there's some areas that we still don't get permission to fly into, and we need to work things out. But we're doing very well in certain cases. But we're trying to do everything with too many rules and regulations. That's the big problem.
I told you, just 5 minutes with me, and you'll be turning into a positive commentator.
No, I don't think so.